in my example with a movie, difference in volume. Specifically, I recommend that you create varying volume levels in your song by section. Let me give you a specific example related to music. A few years ago, I created a track, and a good friend of mine who's in the business, he does a lot of audio engineering and everything else. And I had created this electronic dance track. I was pretty proud of it. The production was pretty sweet. The mixing was sweet. And I let him hear it. I'm just thinking he's going to automatically just start to gush and just give me all the praises about how, sweet I am as a producer. And he didn't. And he's like, hey, Walt, the song is all right. The lyrics are all right. The melody's all right. Listen, the energy from the verse to the chorus back to the verse, it never changed. It was just one volume, one speed, if you will, or one gear. And it was present throughout the entire song. So it felt like the song was just energy-wise, just droning on and on and on and on. His recommendation is like, listen, Walt, why don't you bring the verses down just a bit? Bring some of the energy down just a bit. And when you finally go into your chorus, the audience feels like the chorus is really now starting to hit ultra hard. But if the verses are going hard and the choruses are going hard and the intro's going hard, the bridge is going hard, the perception of loudness never occurs because it's just one speed all the time. And so my point for you is, if you are looking to create a loud and bold sounding track, have varying levels of volume for your different sections in your song. All right, let me do this. I'm going to go ahead and play a track for you. And it's going to be a very short track that I created for this series here. And we're going to be playing this track multiple times to illustrate a lot of different points here. But let's just start with the previous thing that I mentioned. Varying volume levels. Take a listen as to where the volume difference is in terms of section, and think about which section is the louder section. Take a listen. So there's the example. If you're listening very carefully and had your volume at one place for the entire time, the first section was the lower volume section, not by much, but the next section definitely pushed up to another tier or level when it comes to volume. There was a difference between those two sections, and musically they changed. There's a kick drum in the very first section, and then the snare drum took over in the second section. But again, the latter was a lot louder. So it created the perception of loudness because the track started pretty hot, started pretty loud, but then I took it up just a bit more on the final portion of this song here. So again, the perception of loudness will allow for your track to bang a lot harder. Okay, and with that, let me move on to my next point. I'm going to kind of tie the previous point into this. Is in order to achieve the perception of loudness, what I've done in some songs, and this one included, is when I start to group my instruments together, which I do, like my drums or my rhythm, I'll group all of my keyboards together. I'll group all of my bass synths or bass guitars together, or actual guitars. I'll group all my vocals together in buses or folders. When I do this, I like to automate sections. So when I have my intro, I'll say to my digital audio workstation, hey, volume wise, let's pull certain things down, or let's pull the entire mix down. So automation in terms of creating these different step ups and step downs in terms of volume is going to help you substantially in creating an overall louder mix. So again, if your song just has one speed, one gear, you're never going to be able to create the perception of loudness. So use envelopes or automation to draw in like little plateaus in your song. So visually, I'll look back at my song and I see, hey, all of my verses, as an example, they may be down, 2 or 3 decibels overall as compared to, the choruses or the bridge. And then maybe for my bridge, if I really want to take it to like the highest level, my bridge may be 1 dB higher than any other previous portion of the song. And I achieve all of this by way of automation. So that is my next tip for you, to use envelopes and automation to create sections for your song, and you're able to drag those sections up collectively or down collectively to achieve these various levels. All right, let's move on to the next point here, compression. Compression is the secret weapon to creating a very, very loud mix. Now, mind you, it's not the only thing, but it is a major ingredient for achieving a loud presentation of your song. But I want to make a quick disclaimer about this. I am not at this point talking about compression on your master bus or your main volume area here. I'm talking about compression within your music. Remember, we're starting from the inside and we're pulling back. Let's not think about compressing your entire song right now. We will talk about that in a bit. But for right now, compression for various instrumentation within your song is your friend. And for those of you who are not really familiar with the concept of compression, I saw someone the other day in one of the music groups I'm a part of online. They were complaining about how frustrating and complicated compression is. It can be, and most compressors have 5 different major components. So the point is, if the concept of compression just gives you a headache and you feel like you don't know really what's going on, I really recommend that you save this episode so you can keep up with where we are. And again, subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss anything else. But go over to our main website, which is successwithmusic.com, and look for episode 44 and 45. Both of those episodes deal with compression in the 5 elements that are found in most compressors. That will give you better insight on what we're going to talk about here in just a second. All right. So for those of you who know how to handle and manipulate your compressor, let's talk about how we can make it work to your advantage. Now, the first thing is, I highly recommend that the things within your mix that may be, let's say, inconsistent, that you compress them. So for instance, if you have vocals in your song and the vocalists, they were belting out some of the words, and then maybe they were whispering some of the words, and then maybe some of the P's or T's are kind of spiking when you look at the audio clip. That is a track where you probably will need some compression. The reason why you want to compress that, and the reason why it will have an effect on the loudness of your overall song, is all about audio energy. So whenever a vocalist has a spike in their singing, that energy at that point can potentially push the overall track volume beyond 0 dB. Or it can start to crowd up this space, the audio space that can be used for something else. So for instance, if that P or T or that pop in the vocal is out there at a point where the kick drum is dropping or the bass is dropping, that vocal spike may actually reduce or attenuate the energy of the kick drum at that very moment, or the snare, or whatever else should be predominant right there. So if you don't want your vocal to really jump out at that very moment, you're going to need a compressor to squish that vocal down to where it's not taking up extra space that should be used for other instrumentation. So hopefully that makes sense. Your compressor should be used to control anything that you see from an audio clip standpoint that is up and down or spiking to the very edges, and then it's very thin, and then it spikes up. You don't want that. Because again, those spikes, those collective spikes, will start to rob your song of the overall energy. That energy can be used to raise up other things that you want to bring to prominence. So that's why I mentioned at the very beginning that if your final recording for your song looks like a whole bunch of spikes, it's up, it's down, it's up, it's down, that's not going to give you a loud sound. Sure, it's loud at those up parts or those spiked parts, but everything else is down in volume. Whereas that reference track that we talked about, if you look at it, in all likelihood, when the song is the loudest, you're going to have that long rectangle. Sure, there may be some ridges at the very edges of that rectangle, but what it's telling you is that the volume is riding right near the maximum, and they most likely strategically use compression within the song at the instrument level, at the mix level, to where nothing spikes up and robs the other energy around that time. That's why it looks so uniform from left to right, again, at those loud sections. I'm hoping that this is really starting to click for you. So within your song, within your mix, make sure that you compress things that have the tendency to go up and down quite a bit. And even if you have an instrument or a sound that's pretty consistent, you still may have an issue with transients. And if you're not familiar with the term, transient deals with when a sound hits. So for instance, if you have a snare drum clip, or maybe a sample that you have of a snare drum, the very first part of that audio signature you'll see it's very tall, top to bottom, and then it trails off into kind of a triangular shape, right? So that initial wide part or the tallest part of that audio clip, it may cause your overall volume to start to spike. You may like that snare and you want to keep it there, but the initial hit is taking too much audio space or energy away from your mix. This may be another instance to where you can use compression. You can compress the energy of that initial hit of the snare while retaining the trail off of the sound. And if you use some light compression on the snare, it's going to reduce it just a bit, but it's going to also open up room for other instrumentation at that point. The same logic applies to your kick drums, like your 808s and things like that. Or if you have, let's say, percussion or your shakers or your tambourines or whatever it may be, anything that can really have a hard, energetic transient, your compression can be used to lessen the blow to the other instrumentation, allowing that sound to get through, allowing it to retain some of its energy, but not so much to where it robs the rest of the song of its space for additional sounds. All right, so I feel like we've covered quite a bit today, but I know that we've still yet to really get into a lot more things that will help your mix become louder. So I said it before, please subscribe to the podcast because there's a lot more that I have for you. So yeah, according to my notes right now, I'm only at point number 3 on my list, and my list goes all the way up to 11. So that tells you that there are a lot more things that we can do together to get your song to where you want it to be. So again, subscribe to the podcast. I'm telling you, you don't want to miss the rest of the content that we're going to be dropping. We're going to get into sidechain compression, removing phantom energy. Man, there's a lot that we're going to talk about. So make sure you subscribe. Check us out over at our website. That is successwithmusic.com, successwithmusic.com. And if you're feeling special, baby, go over and give us a review on iTunes. Hey, we would love the social proof that we out here, and we're trying to help you get better. That's what it's all about. Help us to keep doing it. Just subscribe, leave some reviews, and make sure you get at us on the next episode. Don't miss out on making your track louder.
$10 of gas won't fill the tank. No, this just gets old. I know there's gotta be a better way for me in this life. That is my dream.